everybody, welcome back. In this video, I'm going to show what are the prerequisites to call SharePoint APIs. Let's begin. So first of all, you guys have to have the SharePoint credentials, which is very important. Without that, you cannot call the SharePoint API. So considering you already have the SharePoint online access, and then we will have few things to consider before we start calling the SharePoint API. So the first thing first, guys, you have to understand all the SharePoint APIs, whether it is to upload a file, is to create the list, to get the list metadata, whatever APIs of SharePoint you want to use, you have to use the authentication mechanism. So SharePoint APIs are secured using OAuth framework. So to an access token is required to call any SharePoint APIs, whether you want to push the data to the SharePoint or the pull the data. So there are various ways to authenticate the SharePoint APIs, whether you can use user policy, you can use add-in policy, which is extensively used to call the APIs, and user plus add-in policy path. So in this video, I will show how do we use add-in policy to authenticate the REST APIs of SharePoint. So we are going to register the add-in in SharePoint Online. Again, like I mentioned, you should have access of the SharePoint and you should have the required permission to add or register the add-in. So there are three steps. The first step is to register the add-in in the SharePoint. So there are URL to register the add-in where https:// domain, the SharePoint domain .sharepoint.com/sites/site name in which you want to add the register, for which you want to grant the permission to the user. But in case you wanted to give the global permission, you can remove /site/site name. So we are simply going to give we are going to register the add-in at a particular site level. That is the reason we will provide site name also, _layout_15_app reg registration new.axpx page. So like my domain name is TechSupper. Unfortunately, my site name is also TechSupper, but domain can be different, site name can be different. So that will become your URL. And when you hit the URL, it will show one page where it will ask few things to enter, like title, app domain, and redirect URL. So you can enter any name of your choice, like Oracle files. You can app domain like localhost. You can put redirect URI https://localhost.com. So after you enter all those details, you have to click on a create button. So this registering the add-in button or step will give you client ID and client secret. So please make sure you save those client ID and client secret at some place, because we would be needing those credentials in the further steps, plus to call those APIs. The second step would be granting permission to the add-in. So following URL you have to use to grant permission to the add-in that you have created in step number 1. So like again, same URL, but the last name will be different. Same thing, in the last you have to append app inv.axpx. So the example would be like this: domain name and then site name. And then here, whenever you come to this page, it will open one you can say form where it will ask the app ID to enter. So in this app ID, you will enter the client ID that you have received in the previous step here. Okay. So and then you will have one text area also where you have to enter which permission you want to allow this client to use. Like here, I'm giving a full control permission using which he can control the complete site via the APIs. So you can enter this XML in this and click on a create button. So when you enter here, you can see app ID. When you enter the app ID and click on a lookup, when you look up, it will fetch all the other details that you have entered in the first step. You simply need to provide the XML to give permission and click on a create button. When you create, so it will show this screen. Do you want to trust Oracle files, your add-in name, and you click on the trusted from the next screen, from this screen, I mean. Okay. So the third step is to get the tenant ID. So this tenant ID would be unique for each SharePoint tenant that will be used while generating the access token. So again, the URL would be like domain.sharepoint.com/_layout_15_app principles.axpx. So when you hit this, it will give you this page where you will find the tenant ID after at the rate. So this complete from EFF233 last. So you have to copy it and keep it somewhere because we would be needing it when we call the access token API. So guys, these are the three things that you would be needing to call SharePoint APIs. Thank you. And in the next video, we will show how do we call the APIs in Postman. Thank you. Bye-bye.